In this video tutorial, we are going to discuss about some special types of arguments which are passed to functions, namely positional arguments, named or keyword arguments, and default arguments. First of all, let us discuss what is the difference between the terms parameters and arguments. See, when we define a function with the keyword def, then the variable names which are written inside the small brackets or parentheses like x and y here, these are called parameters. Okay, when function is called, then any value that is passed to the function are assigned to these parameters. Okay, so remember, parameters are the variables written in the function definition into which data are passed when function is called. Now we come to what are arguments. See, here this function is called fun a comma b. Obviously a is being passed to parameter x and b is being passed to parameter y. Okay, so this data which is actually passed to the function when the function is called, this data is called arguments. Okay, so arguments are data which are passed into and these are passed into parameters obviously when function is called. Okay, so a and b are here arguments. So remember this difference between parameters and arguments. As written in this example, x and y are parameters and a and b are arguments. A and b are arguments. Now we see an example of named or keyword arguments, and we also discuss what are positional arguments. See, whenever we call a function like this call, see, this is the main program. Three statements. First three statement, a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and fun ap. Ignore the fourth statement for now. Now what is happening is that we are creating two variables with the names a and b with values 10 and 20, and we are also calling the function fun and passing the values of variables a and b into the parameters x and y of this function. Okay, and what this function does is just prints x divided by y. It divides the parameter x by the value of parameter y and prints the result. Now this is the normal way, the most common way a function is called. Okay, you just write the data which you want to pass to the function, and that data is passed in the left to right order to the parameters. Okay, the first value a is passed to parameter x, and the second data or the second value of argument of variable b is passed to parameter y. So arguments are assigned to parameters in the left to right order. This is the normal way we call a function, and such types of arguments are known as positional arguments. Okay, so when arguments are assigned to parameters using their position in the function call, the order left to right is used for assigning to parameters, then these are called positional arguments. Now, but as we said, this is one of the ways you can call a function. There are other ways also. Now see this example. In the fourth line of the main program, in this line we are again calling the same function fun, but we are calling it in a slightly different way. What we are doing is that instead of passing the arguments using the positional the default mechanism of positional arguments, what we are doing is we are writing the names of the parameters also. See, we have written y and x also in this function call. Okay, so what this is doing is that we are specifying that y is equal to a and x is equal to b. So we have specified clearly that y parameter of the function will get the value of the variable a, and the x parameter of the function will get the value of the variable b. Okay, so this is against the default left to right assignment of parameters, right? So we have altered, uh, we have bypassed this default mechanism of passing arguments to parameters, and we have specified clearly that which parameter will get which argument. Okay, so when arguments are passed in this way, uh, in which we specify the particular parameters which will be assigned the values of the individual arguments, then such mechanism is called named or keyword arguments. Then these arguments are known as named arguments or keyword arguments. Okay, so we can change this order of assignment by specifying the names of parameters explicitly in the function call to pass desired arguments to them, irrespective of the order of writing them. Okay, so we are first writing a and then writing b in this function call, but a is being passed to y instead of x. Okay, so changed we have changed the order of assignment of arguments to parameters, and such arguments are known as named arguments or keyword arguments. Now we should also look at the output of this program also. See, when in the first function call, when we passed a and b into x and y respectively, then value 10 was put into variable or parameter x, and value 20 was put into parameter y. And what this function did is to divide x by y. So it divided 10 by 20, it divided 10 by 20, which resulted in 0.5, and here 0.5 was printed in the output. 0.5 is printed here in the output. And in the second function call, when we passed the value of a, which is 10, to y, so y got the value 10 in the second function call, and parameter x got the value of b, which is 20. So y got the value 10 and x got the value 20. Now x divided y, that means 20 divided 10, it gives us 2, so we got printed the value 2. So this is how we can change the assignment of arguments to parameters. Now we look at something known as default arguments. See, there are situations in programming in which we don't want to always specify certain arguments which because they have the same value repeatedly for many function calls. Okay, look at so the programming languages provide you this notion of default arguments, in which you don't necessarily have to provide values for those arguments, and if you don't provide any argument for those parameters, then some default value will be assumed for those parameters. Okay, so look at this function definition. Def fun, 3 parameters are declared, x, y and z, but z is declared in some special way. It is written that z is equal to 10. So what does this mean is that z is a default argument or default parameter, and if we when calling the function we don't supply an argument for z, then value 10 will be assumed for it. Okay, if you don't provide a value for z, then value 10 will be assumed for z. That is why it is called default argument or default parameter. Now see what this program does. It simply prints the sum of x plus y plus z. Okay, it does nothing special. We just want to see how default arguments are used. Okay, so see, in the main program we create 3 variables a, b and c with values 10, 20 and 30 respectively, and in the first function call fun ab, in the first function call we have only provided 2 arguments, a and b. and the number of parameters in the function definition is 3, whereas we have provided only 2 arguments. That means a will be assigned to x, b will be assigned to y, but z will be assigned no value. When there has been specified no argument for parameter z, in this case the value 10 will be assumed for the parameter z. Okay, so now let us see what happens. Value of x gets the value 10, the value of a, y gets the value 20 with the value of b from the function called fun ab. Okay, and z is assigned the default value 10. So now what is the value of x plus y plus z? 10 plus 20 plus 10, that is 40. So 40 is printed as shown in the output window. 40 is printed by this function call. Okay, now let us look at the second function call. We again call this function in this line fun a comma b comma c. Here fun a comma b comma c. Now in this function call we have provided 3 arguments, a, b and c, and there are 3 parameters. So what happens now is that a is assigned to x as before, b is assigned to y as before, but this time c is assigned to z, and z gets the value of c, which is 30, and this default value 10 is ignored. Okay, so when you provide an argument for a default parameter, the default value is ignored and the value you provide as argument is assigned to that parameter. Okay, and this time since z has value 30 instead of 10, so x plus y plus z becomes 10 plus 20 plus 30, which is 60, and that is why we are we see 60 in the output window because of the second function call fun a comma b comma c. Okay, so this is the concept of default arguments. Now there is a small rule which you must remember about default arguments. The first rule is we have mentioned only one rule, that any number of default parameters may be declared in a function definition. Okay, it is not necessary that only one default parameter may be specified. You may specify any number of default parameters, but the only thing you must remember is that all such default parameters are written at the last, in the rightmost part of the parameter list in the function definition. Okay, like as in this example also we have written z after x and y. X and y are normal parameters, they are not default parameters, and z is the default parameter, and z is written after x and y in the rightmost part of the parameter list. Okay, so if if more than default parameters are being specified, then also all the default parameters must be specified in the rightmost part of the function definition. Otherwise it leads to confusion as to which arguments are to be assigned to which variables. Okay, now let us see one more example of a default argument. Suppose we have a function to calculate simple interest by the name interest. This has 3 arguments, p, t and r. P stands for principal amount, t stands for time, and r stands for rate of interest. Now as we see that rate of interest is largely common for a category of consumers or customers. Okay, so let us assume that the rate of interest is 10. Now see what happens is that normally only the principal amount and the time of depositing the money, these two quantities vary, whereas the rate of interest remains mostly the same for all the customers. So we want to declare the rate of interest as a default parameter with a default value. That is why we have written p comma t comma r is equal to 10 in the function definition. So r is a default parameter, and whenever you are calling this function interest to calculate some simple interest for some principal amount, then you don't necessarily have to specify any argument for this rate of interest. If you don't specify any argument, then the value 10 is assumed for rate of interest. Okay, but if you do specify an argument for parameter r, then that argument's value will be used as the value of r. Now let us see that we have created some variables in the main program. Principal amount as rupees 10,000, t is equal to 5 years, and rate of interest is equal to 20, and we are calling this function interest two times. In the first instance, we are just calling it with p and t values. That means only two values are supplied: principal amount and time. So obviously in this function call, rate of interest will be assumed to be 10%, and this prints this value p multiplied by r multiplied by t divided by 100. And in the second function call, the second time this function is called, we are providing three arguments: p, t and r. So in this function call, the rate of interest r will be provided the value 20 instead, and the default value 10 will be ignored. Okay, thank you.